Testing, 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 testing. You should hear me now. No, still nothing. Testing, testing, testing. Nope. 1 second. Let me try. Let me start over. Hold on. Testing. Testing, testing. You hear me now, Archbishop? Testing, testing. All right, good, good, good. All right. Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your king, King Clifford Jefferson, Senator of Godfrey, the fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we at the Third Tibet English Church of England refer to as our Jesus Christ. I apologize for the interruption. Apparently, we had some disruption with the mic, but we got that straight. So, this point on, we'll be loud and clear. Once again, it is July 7th, 2024, which is our Berber year, 2974, which is the equivalent to your Gregorian year, 2024. I greet you in the name of the predecessors, the ancestors, our successors, the born, the unborn. I greet you in the name of the queens, the goddesses, the gods, all those, all the above. I want to give honor to my queen, Sister Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, as well as Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, Bishop Searchy from the House of Searchy, my moderators, as well as all those who are trying to get an understanding of what it is that we are here and called to do. All right, this is going to be a beautiful lecture. It's long overdue. I promised that I did it on July 2nd, but unfortunately we went into some difficulty. But we're here today, so I'm glad all of you had a good holiday. But there's no holiday like a true holiday, and a holiday for us is a free holiday, which we have not yet got. So this is an election to this is a lecture to perpetuate that holiday that is sure to come. All right. This lecture, as I promised you, is called Magnifying the Moorish History from Heraldry Point of View. Once again, magnifying the Moorish history from a heraldry point of view. This is very important for all those who are claimed to be members, citizens, indigenous people here in what we call North America. All right. It's very important for you to watch this because we here at the Third Tibet English Church of England refer to ourselves as the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, and there's a purpose and a reason for that. This is the reason why we don't identify with other names, such as Moors, Jews, or any other a group. All right, lacking an ethnicity. Okay, lacking an ethnicity. All right, here in North America, not over there in other continents or countries, but we talk about here in North America. We know that the foundation of the political society or the or social compact or the social contract between the citizens here in North America and the governing body, which you call government, is based upon that which we call the common law of England. Okay, I'm going to cover a lot of ground. Unfortunately, I won't have my moderator to be able to read for me. I got a lot of information to cover, so hopefully I won't miss anything. So y'all bear with me. And like I said, this is one of the best lectures that I think I ever came across. Once again, there's nothing new under the sun. I don't come to change the law, but to fulfill the law by making clear what the law is. All right, making clear what the law is. So all those who are here today, please log on, send your love, the gift donations, as well as your time. All right, is needed here, especially in these day and time. Okay. We're going to cover a lot of ground today, all right? And specifically tell it around the Chevron deference case, all right? The Chevron deference case, all right? I know you all heard a lot about that. We're going to talk about that today and going to put it into perspective. What I mean by perspective is that if you go on YouTube and you hear about the Chevron case, you see a lot of context to the syllabus of the Chevron deference case that was dismissed by the United States Supreme Court. But what you're not hearing is the basis, the true basis of why the Chevron deference case was annulled. All right. It's very important for you to understand the purpose and intent. It's not what you think. Of course, when it's being reviewed by a judiciary, they're never going to go into the presidents based upon their decision. Okay. What I mean by that, I mean the president based upon the question of law, not fact or evidence. All right. Because we know the Chevron case is dealing with the ability of the United States agencies under the administrative law created by the Administrative Procedure Act to be able to interpret the statute, okay, based upon the ambiguity in the federal or state or constitutional legislative statute, that they are able to determine the ambiguity in the statute, which is a violation of the APA. Because fact finding and evidence denoting to that fact could be decided by an agency, but the questions of law regarding fact of law should be questioned by who? The judiciary, because that was the original intent of your Congress. All right? Everybody hold that thought for a second. I'll be with you shortly. Okay. I'm back. So I know a lot of you right now are thinking, what does heraldry has to do with the Chevron deference case? What does it have to do with the Chevron case? All right. What does it has to do with the Chevron deference case? Because we know heraldry deals with what we call coats of arms, vexillology, all right, barons, the insignia, all right, that's used to show status, rank, affiliated with some type of military service, some type of rank, dealing with some type of office. All right, it's very important because when we look back into the history concerning us identify as black people and we look and see ourselves on the coat of arms, a lot of us misunderstand that coat of arms because originally when you see it in the coat of arms, not necessarily has to deal with what we call nobility. Okay, nobility. All right, so it's very important that you Moors pay very, very, very close attention. I'm not picking on you. I just want to broaden your oversight so that you'll be able to see the clear transition and transformation that must take place for your redemption to your lost estate. All right. It's very important. I can't concern about everybody else. All right. We're talking about Moors because Moors are more affiliated with the Berbers. The reason why you got Moors is a result of the mixture or the amalgamation of Arabs mixing with Berbers, which brought forth what we call Moors. Okay, I'm not just making this up. This is the evidence is going to be proven. All right. So please put all your pride aside. Listen to the voice of reasoning by making reasons based off a cognitive faculty. All right. It's not based off acting off some stimulus, based off a perception. All right. A majority of our people are stuck in perceptions, what they perceive things to be, which they are not. Okay. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. This is by God a beautiful lesson. All right. Beautiful lesson. I'm going to take my time. I give honor to AI Companion because, sometimes when I do the review of the AI Companion, listen to some of the content that it did based off its own analysis. And it's really, really beautiful how he put it. It's actually comical because it really does justice to this age and time. Okay. All right. It really does it some justice. So, what does heraldry has to do with the Moorish American? All right. Looking at it through the eyes of heraldry. All right. Because this denotes your status, your rank. All right. Because everybody want to be noble, but it hasn't proven that you're in fact and indeed of a noble race. In order for that, you must have an ethnicity. You must be able to associate yourself with a common group of ancestors. Very, very, very important. I'm not saying amalgamated, mixed in group of ancestors, but a distinctive group of common ancestors. We call universal common ancestors. We know that the Moors, or the term Moor, dealing with a group of people identified as the people historically living in that territory called Morocco as a misnomer. All right. We know that territory goes back to the Triassic era, to the Paleozoic era, when North America, New Jersey, and what we call North Africa, a Morocco was connected as a Pangea. And the word or the term or the phrase Morocco and New Jersey was never into existence. But as a part of the territory comprising of what we call North America and what we call North Africa, we know at one time in the Pangea, going through the Paleozoic area, it was connected. All right. We already talked about that. I don't have time to refresh your minds with that. So if you haven't uh, got that breakdown, please revisit the prior lessons. So heraldry. Before we can even deal with heraldry, we have to deal with the root of the word heraldry, which is called herald. Okay, to herald. What does it mean to herald? Let's look at it. And using the basic understanding, the basic tool that everyone has access to, and it's Wikipedia. Wikipedia is baby food. All right. And from my understanding, majority of you people out there are babies. You're a baby. You have no more cognitive faculties than my soon to be 2-year old grandson, based upon the level of understanding that you should have as a people, a society, a body of politics, because you make up the body of politics. All right. But what are you politicking about? Everything that you're politicking about is nonchalant. It's for naught. I'm going to show you. All right? Because there's no message in it. There's no message. There's no interpretation of the message. There's no origin from where the message comes from. All right? So whether you know the message, can interpret the message, it doesn't validate that the message is for real. It's just a perception. All right? According to your understanding as Moors. All right? As Moors. All right. Let's see. Harold. Herald. We're not looking at it from an abstract, but we want some type of concrete understanding about the root word of the word heraldry, which is the word herald. What does herald mean? When you get time, you can look through all the other stuff they got there in reference to the pictures and things like that. But we're more concerned about the language, all right, of the origin of the word or the term or the phrase herald. Herald or herald of arms is an officer of arms, ranking between persever, perse, persevere, perse, pursuivant and the king of arms. The title is commonly applied to more broadly to all officers of arms. Okay, so it's a position, it's an office of rank, of status. Okay, pedigree, pursuivant. Herald was originally messengers. Did you hear that? Were originally messengers sent by the monarch or noblemen to convey messages or proclamations. In this sense, being the predecessors of modern diplomats. Did you hear that? So this is what the root word of the word heraldry derives from. Herald is a messenger from a monarch or a nobleman, all right, bringing a message or a proclamation, all right. So this person will be considered what they call a diplomat, okay, all right, somebody who has the right to enter other countries free to travel, all right, based upon their political affiliation and the political status, all right, very important. And the sixth being the predecessor of the modern diplomatics. In the Hundred-Year War, French heralds challenged King Henry V to fight during the Battle of Agincourt. The English herald and the French herald Montjoy watched the battle together from a nearby hill. Both agreed that the English were the victors, and Montjoy provided King Henry V, who thus earned the right to name the battle with the name of the nearby castle. All right, so we see the word herald is termed for the word messenger. All right. And they gave you an example by referring to the Hundred-Year War, which succeeded the War of what we call the Roses between the Yorks and the Lancaster cadet branches of the Plantagenet crown, where Godfrey V, Count, son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem, where my surname Jefferson descended down from. Very important to understand because it denotes to heraldry, all right, and heraldry by the messengers who have that status placed upon them by way of them being of noble birth. And the only way you can be of noble birth is by being a noble descendant, and the noble descendant usually falls in the line of you being the heir to what we call the monarch. Okay, the monarch. Very simple and plain. All right, we're giving you the example and we are affiliated with a society or a group of people now then known as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. They were always Anglo-Saxon Berbers because you didn't have the first English reading out here till William the Conqueror, which was a Frankish, Franco Northman, Viking, barbarian, okay? Has no ethnological ancestry. I'm not just making that statement. I'm going to prove it. All right. So we know what heraldry means. Herald means it means messenger. Okay. So we can look past that and go into the word heraldry. Everybody needs to keep notes. Heraldry is a discipline related to the design, display, and study of armorial bearings known as armory. Brother Truth, you better be listening because you could be in violation of antitrust law, and copyright law, which you were informally warned, and you will be formally warned by way of Archbishop Belmont, who will be sending you a notice real quick, shortly. Okay? So understand heraldry is protected by antitrust law and copyright law, which is the de facto law created by what we call the United States under their administrative agencies by way of the power given to the executive branch, which was a violation of law from the door. Okay? From the door. Watch how your king put this together. Why? Because I am the now reigning monarch. Okay, so it's very important for me to understand this, as well as for you to discern what it is that I'm giving you to understand, so that you can take your proper place as resulting to your pedigree, rank by the ceremonies that are provided, going back to what we call time immemorial, based upon vexillology, which goes back to our flag, because vexillology deals with flags. Okay, it deals with flags. Armory, the best known branch of heraldry, concerns the design and transmission of the heraldic achievement. The achievement or armorial bearings usually include a coat of arms on a shield, helmet, and crest, together with an accompanying device such as supporters, badges, heraldic banners, and mottos. Okay? And mottos. Although the use of various devices to signify individuals and groups go back to antiquity, both the form and use of such devices vary widely, as the concept of regular hereditary designs constituting the distinguishing features of heraldry did not develop, all right, until the High Middle Ages. When they say antiquity, they're talking about the time of antiquity is the High Middle Ages. That would be so if it was just started or developed in the High Middle Ages. So that's the era or the time frame dealing with things that are considered to be valued as under the antiquity. Antiquity. It is often claimed that the use of helmets with face guards during this period made it difficult to recognize one's commanders in the field when large armies gathered together for extended periods, necessitating the development of heraldry as a symbolic language, but there is little support for the view. Okay, this is the story they created behind heraldry in regards to the warfare issue that originated as a result of conflict that originated as a result of this nobility. Okay, this sacred, ancient, integral part of this nobility descended down from where? The monarch. The monarch. All right. So it said it was not developed until what? The High Middle Ages. So what is the High Middle Ages? Just get an understanding about that. You're on time. You can do a further elaboration about the Wikipedia page in regards to uh, the High Middle Ages. All right. We're just going to get a snippet of it, though. So heraldry developed in the High Middle Ages, which is considered for us as antiquity. Okay? I don't know what your definition of antiquity means based upon some abstract thought or idea or theory. But we're reading based off of concrete that the antiquity goes back to what we call the High Middle Ages, where heraldry descended down from, which were the ones who gave the message. Okay? That's the message. Those are the signs and symbols of the hidden messages in regards to our statuses that have now been taken and used for other purposes and intent. All right? High Middle Ages or High Medieval period was the period of European history that lasted from AD 1000 to 1300 AD, Annos Dominus, which means in the year of our Lord. The High Middle Ages were preceded by early Middle Ages and were followed by the late Middle Ages, where ended around the AD 1500 by historical graphical convention. Everybody know in the brackets you can see your sources. All right, I don't have time to show you that. If you don't believe me, you can go right there to Wikipedia and hit it yourself. Key historical trends of high Middle Ages include rapidly increasing population of Europe, which brought about great social and political change from the preceding era, and the Renaissance of the 12th century, including the first development of world exodus of urbanization. All right, of urbanization, and we're talking about barbarians, world exodus, concerning urbanization. I'm not just making that connection, I'm going to prove it. By 1350, the robust population increase had greatly benefited from the European economy, which reached levels that would not be seen again in some areas until the 19th century. That trend faltered during the late Middle Ages because of serious calamities, most notably the Black Death, but also numerous wars, as well as economic stagnation. Historical events concerning the high Middle Ages. All right? Historical events. In England, the Norman conquest of 1066 resulted in a kingdom ruled by Francophone nobility. Francophone nobility. That means people of Frankish descendants speaking the same language. All right. Francophone has to deal with the language that the people speak, contrast to what we call the Franco spirit. All right. So it says the historical and political background concerning what we call the High Middle Ages started in England concerning the Norman conquest, who were these people who spoke the language of the Francophone because they were Frankish, Nordic, Northmen, Vikings called barbarians. All right? Because we know prior to 1066, there was no English speaking out years because William the Conqueror became the first English speaking out year. Prior to that, there were only Anglo-Saxon Berbers ruling at that time. The Normans invaded Ireland in 1169 and soon established themselves through most of the country, although their strongholds was the southeast. Likewise, Scotland and Wales were subdued into vassal states at about the same time, though Scotland later asserted its independence in Wales, remaining largely under the rule of independent native principles until the death of Llewyn ap Gruffudd in 1282. The Exchequer was founded in the 12th century under King Henry I, and the first parliaments were convened. In 1215, after the loss of Normandy, King John signed the Magna Carta into law, which limited the power of English monarchs. So this is all happening in what we call the high Middle Ages. All right. So let's go back to what we call heraldry. Rabbit symbols have been used to represent individual groups for thousands of years. The earliest representation of distinct persons and regions in Egyptian art showed that the use of standard top with the images of symbols and various gods and the names of kings appear upon emblems known as shrieks, representing the king's palace, and usually topped with a falcon representing the gods Horus, of whom the king was regarded as their earliest incarnation. Similar emblems and devices are found in ancient Mesopotamia, art of the same period, and the precursor of heraldic beasts, such as a griffin, can also be found. That's mighty strange because my surname, Jefferson, has a griffin on it. Okay? Let's just show you. So that means that the surname is a surname of nobility concerning the heraldry. All right, and it's not and based upon ancient antiquity, going back to the High Middle Ages, and not going all the way back to some story created without any governmental influence in its present day. Okay, very important. No, if there's no government influence to sustain those people who claim to be of that ethnicity here in North America, then 9 times out of 10, it was not true. Okay, it wasn't true. You see Jefferson family crescent coat of arms. You see a cruce salute, which means salvation from the cross. This is the one you see in Wales. Let's see it in England. There you see it again, the griffin. We know griffins are associated with gold. All right. You see a gold, a medallion, and the griffin's his claws. Okay. As well, you see it on the family crest and coat shield. All right. You see it on in the quadrant parts. All right, you see an X and you see a particular line in it, and as you, of course, you see the surname Jefferson. Just showing you the connection to the heraldry that the name has in his present day that I'm connecting it to. All right, as the individuals in the groups that descended down these symbols and signs, which was a message to us in this present day, which we did not know as a result of the hiding of these mysteries. All right. But now they're coming to revelation by way of the messages that were dormant as a result of us understanding the molecular composition of ourselves, but it has to do with the abstract term you call angels. All right. Angels, because the word angel or English means what? Messenger. Okay. Let's move forward. Back to heraldry. We're still on heraldry, y'all. This is the abstract talk. We want to go to the origin that the heraldry have in the High Middle Ages. Okay, very important. This is the medieval heralds also devised arms for various knights and lords from history and literature. Notably, examples include the toads attributed to Pharamond, the cross and martlets of Edward the Confessor, and the various arms attributed to the nine worthies and the knights of the Round Table. So that's based upon some mythical story or some folklore, but we know Edward the Confessor was the last king of the kings of Wessex, which resulted in the invasion of Normandy with William the Conqueror. And at that time, Edward the Confessor was in cahoots with what we call Danish kings. All right, Danish kings, Harold Godwinson. All right, and they aligned themselves based upon the history and the patronage that was done by the kings of Wessex, going all the way back to Alfred the Great. Okay, and we're talking about heraldry. We're connecting this history of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers to heraldry, and we want to connect the history concerning the Moorish back to heraldry, so you can get a better understand that if the name or the term Moor denotes to the status of what we call nobility, or that of a status or a title denoting to that of non-ethnology, which denotes to what we call barbarianism. Okay, all right. Let's just visit the truth. Let's hear the truth. Let's see. So we're looking at heraldry. Origins of modern history. There you see Godfrey the Fifth Kind of Van Jew, Plantagenet. The development of modern heraldic language cannot be attributed to a single individual time or place. Although certain designs that are now considered heraldic were evidently in use during the 11th century, most accounts and depictions of shields up to the beginning of the 12th century contain little or no evidence of their heraldic character. For example, the Beatix tapestry illustrated the Norman invasion of England in 1066 and probably commissioned about 1077 when the Cathedral of Beatix was rebuilt, that depicts a number of shields of various shapes and designs, many of which are plain, while others are decorated with dragons, crosses, or other typical heraldic figures. Yet no individual is depicted twice bearing the same arms, nor are any of the descendants of the various persons depicted known to have borne devices resembling those of in the tapestry. All right, there go your sources. You can see it if you choose to go and follow them. One of the earliest known examples of army, as in the subsequently came to be practiced, can be seen on the tomb of Godfrey the Plantagenet, the Count of Anjou, which I'm a descendant of, who was the son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem, all right, who died in 1151. An enamel probably commissioned by Godfrey's widow between 1155 and 1160 depicts him carrying a blue shield decorated with 6 golden lion ramparts. He wears a blue helmet adorned with another lion, and his cloak and lion and bear. Medieval chronicles state that Godfrey was given a shield. Listen, y'all, given a shield of this description when he was knighted by his father-in-law, Henry I, in 1128, but this account probably dates to about 1175. Henry I was the son of who? William the Conqueror, who invaded England. All right. We know that Henry I's son, William Allen, was supposed to marry Godfrey's father's Folk the Fifth, ruler of Jerusalem, daughter, Matilda of Anjou, but Allen died in a white ship, which caused the anarchy. All right. A breakdown in civil government. All right. Which resulted in what we call the Clarendon Constitution and the Clarendon Assize Courts, which is the courts you have presently in this day and time. All right. Very important for you to understand that. But it said that the father of the William the Conqueror, the Northman, the Viking, the Franco descendant, who was a barbarian, knighted Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, son of Folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. You see it here. We talk about Anglo-Saxon Berbers because you didn't get English kings until Henry the First father William the Conqueror came into existence and became crowned in 1066. All right. This is not guess. This is not randomness. These are just plain, simple facts. The earliest heraldic writer attributed the lions of England to William the Conqueror, but the earliest evidence of the association of lions with the English crown is a shield bearing 2 lions parts of bearing 2 lion passant used by the future King John during the lifetime of his father, Henry II, who died in 1189. This is why we make reference to the term time immemorial, because Henry II father was the father of King John, Henry II, parts of Henry II, son of Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, was the father of King John, Richard I, and Henry III, who was the father of Edward I, all right, who was the father of Edward II, who was the father of Edward III, which were the fathers or the predecessors of what we call the Yorks and the Lancaster branches, which were cadet branches of the Plantagenet crown, which ended in what we call the War of the Roses, which started what we call the Hundred-Year War. All right. These are undisputable facts that no one cares to talk about. Why? Because they don't know this history. Let's move along. But we're concerning Moorish, though. This is lessons about what we call it magnifying, because I'm giving you or magnifying your comprehension about the Moorish history concerning its heraldic origin. All right, very important concerning your heraldic origin because it has to denote to a monarch because it said that heraldry originated through antiquity and the high middle ages. So you as Moors must trace your ancestry, whether your status is of high pedigree or low pedigree, to the high middle ages. And we see who ruling right now in the high middle ages, and they are not Northmen, they are not Moors, they are not Arabs, they are Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay? So let's talk about the Moors now. Queen, warm this up for me? Heraldic. Covered everything here. Let's go here. Moorish. Everybody, please pay attention. The term Moor is an excellent acronym. If I pronounce that word wrong, please forgive me. First used by Christian Europeans, all right, to designate the Muslim population of the Maghreb, Al-Andalus, Iberia Peninsula, Sicily, and Malta during the Middle Ages. Moors are not a single, distinct, or self-defined people. The 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica observed that the term has no real ethnological value. You hear that? I don't know if you guys know about the Encyclopedia Britannica of 1911, created in Edinburgh in 1786, somewhere around there, 89. The 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica observed that the term Moor has no real ethnological value. There's your source. Chisholm Hill, Morocco. All right. Europeans of the Middle Ages and the early modern period variously applied to the name to Arabs, Berbers, and Muslim Europeans. Okay. So the name Moor is associated with Arabs, Berbers, and other Europeans. But we're not Arabs, nor are we Moors. We are Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Because we know that Arabs and Moors are a mixture that came about by amalgamating with what we call Berbers. All right, let's prove it. So we know that according to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, that they have no ethnological relationship. Let's just go to the source. We don't want to believe anything. Moors, Mori, very important. Latin name Mori, Spanish Morenos. All right, English Moors means dark men. We know dark is a incorrect term because we refer to ourselves as melanated beings. The name which at the present use is loosely applied to any native of Morocco, but in a stricter sense, only to the townsmen of mixed descent. In this sense, it is also used of the Mohammedan townsmen in other barbary states. It's the word barbarian. it has been it has been by some connected with the Hebrew or Phoenician, i.e., what we call Sephardic Jew. All right, very important. It has been by some connected with the Hebrew and Phoenician Mahur Western. Weststein derived it from Mahur, a corrupter of Amisur, with its plural Amazur or Mazur archaic from forms of the Berber native named Amazigh, the free. From Maurice, the classical name for the northwestern African tribe. The northwestern district of the continent came to be called by the Romans Mauritania. Okay? Also the word or the term Marrakesh. The term Moor has no real ethnological value. The tribe known the tribes known to the Romans by that name were undoubtedly of Berber stock. Okay? So it has no ethnological value. I didn't say that. That's what they said in the 1911 encyclopedia. Why? Because we know that Moors are a mixture of Berbers and Arabs. So let's go to the 1911 encyclopedia and define the term Berber. We read this article before. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I just want to get to my point and move forward. Berber. It says here, all that is not Arabic in the kingdom of Morocco, all that is not Arabic in the French province of Algeria, which we are going to talk about today, and all that is not Arabic in Tunis, Tripoli, and Fezan is Berber. The explanation lies in a profound distinction of character. The Arab is a herdsman and a nomad. The Berber is an agricultural and a townsman. The Arab has built his social structure on the Quran, which inculcates absolutism, aristocracy, theocracy. The Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism, is a Democrat with his Simna called in Anglo-Saxon government Witama, and the code of law in the Anglo-Saxon is called the Magna Carta, contrast to the Qanun. All right, it's right here. So we just got a definition from the 1911 encyclopedia concerning the two terms identifying a group that has an ethnicity and one group that does not. All right, that does not. Very important. Back to the word more. But let's associate it with that heraldry. You're probably saying that's all talk. So let's associate because we got Moorish heads and these are all noble heirs and descendants that we're descending down from as Moors. Okay, you don't know if it's noble. This is what you through your five senses, through your perception, which is your sensory faculty, assume that they're noble without going to the origin of the people at that time where those coastal arms originated from. So if you haven't did it then, we're gonna do it today. So we can dead this issue once and for all. Okay? Because we can be forever associated with the Moors with some folkland or folklore or theology concerning Moors. All right. But where is the status? Where is the rank? Where is the pedigree? All right. Concerning the Moors, referring to those identified in those coats of arms that denotes what we call heraldry. Because if we look at heraldry concerning the word Moor, this is what you'll find. This Wikipedia page is very interesting for those who read it, but for the sake of the lesson, I can't read it all. Our topic today is heraldry. I mean, the heraldry originated from the root word herald, which means message. So you should receive a message from your ancestors to assist you in this present day. All right, with some type of assistance from the government, from your ancestors from the past that's still here in this present day. How many of you can actually say you have that connection? None. None. Why? Let's see. Because the same stats you had then, you still have it now. I bet you everyone, all you more read this whole page, but didn't go here. Didn't go here. Heraldry. You read all that other stuff, but skip this part. Why? Let's see why you skipped it. In heraldry, the word more. The only thing you did was took the coat of arms and ran with it. All right? That's all you did. Not realizing that it's not connected to any ethnicity. All right? Moors or more frequently their heads, often crowned, appeared with some frequency in medieval European heraldry. So that means you must go back to the high Middle Ages, which we call antiquity. Which we call antiquity. Yeah, you know this is fire. Moors are more frequently referred to their heads, often crown appear with some frequency in medieval European heraldry, though less so since the Middle Ages. All right. So once you see the crown head, you automatically associate with some type of nobility. All right. The term ascribed to them in Anglo-Norman blades in the language of English heraldry is moray, though they are also sometimes called Moor, Blackamoor, Blackamoor, or just simply Negro. Morays appear in European heraldry from at least as early as the 13th century. The 13th century. All right, so when you start looking to the heraldry concerning the word Moor, which the majority of the people who call yourself Moor, especially what's his name, uh, what's that guy's name, uh, he always wearing a feather in his hat. What's that guy's name? Uh, skip my mind. What's that brother's name? It slipped my mind. Slipped my head. What is his name? You know who I'm talking about. Y'all know who I'm talking about. See what this brother's name is. Asir Ducateres. Asir Ducateres. All right. You keep talking about y'all noble. Did you read this? If you didn't, you're gonna read it now. Moorish appear in European heraldry from at least the earliest as the 13th century, and some have been attested as early as the 11th century in Italy, where they have persisted in the local heraldry and vexillology well into modern time in Corsica and Sardinia. Did you hear that? Very important. In Corsica and Sardinia. Why is this important? Why is this important? Let's see. Let's go to Moor's Head or Crown Moor. A Moor's head, also known as moray, since the 11th century is a symbol depicted in the head of a blackamoor. The term Moor came to define anyone who was a Muslim or had black skin. We understand Moors had no ethnicity as a result of its mixture with Arabs. Prior to that mixture as Arab, you were a Berber, which has an ethnicity, which were called Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay? You had a government in the ancient times and in the time of antiquity and the high Middle Ages. You had a government function at that particular time. William the Conqueror didn't come until 1066. Prior to that, everything was ours. Okay? Now, it wasn't Taj Tariq, it was brother Asher Ducatir, but you can add him to it. You can add Taj Tariq to it. Everyone who watches this video needs to pass this lecture on to Taj Tariq and brother Asher Ducatir. The origin of the Moor's head, associated with the blackamoors or the Moors or Negro or simply black person. The precise origin of the Moor's head is a subject of controversy. Of course, it's a subject of controversy. The most likely explanation is that it is derived from the heraldic war flag of Reconquista depicted in the cross of Alcaraz, symbolizing Peter I of Aragon and Pamphylia, the victory over the Moorish king of Taifa and Zaragoza, and the Battle of Alcaraz in 1096. Okay, so this is where the Moor's head is most closely associated with is the cross of Alcaraz. Okay, the cross of Alcaraz. Let's just get into that a little bit more. Moray. Moray, from which derives the English term Moor, was the Latin designation for the Berber population of Mauritania, not Morocco, Mauritania, located in the west side of North Africa on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Mauritania, Tingitata, and Mauritania, Caesar Serenius, and present-day Morocco, and northwestern Algeria. Okay, the name. Moray by Strabo, who wrote in the earliest first century as a native name, which was also adopted into Latin, while he cites the Greek name for the same people as Maurice. Morris, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please forgive me. Maurice. The name Maury as a tribal confederation or generic ethnic designator thus seems to roughly correspond to people known as Numidians in early ethnography. Both terms presumably group early Berber-speaking population. The earliest Libico Berber epigraph dates to about the 3rd century. Okay, so we see that the word Moor is no different than the word or the term Maori. Okay, so we say in the origin of the Moor's head, dealing with those who are crowned as Moors, associated with that of nobility, associated with what they call cross of Alcaraz. Okay, the cross of Alcaraz. How many of you heard of that? Argent cross of gold with 4 heads of Moorish kings in the quarter, known as the cross of Alcaraz, Cruz de Alcaraz, Gaspar Torres, Amaro of Aragon. All right, very important for you to understand that. All right, so this is the Moors or the Moor's head associated with the crown of Aragon. Okay, the crown of Aragon placed on the flag associated with Saint George. Okay, Saint George, a European saint, not the English saint. They depicted Saint George at the English saint, but we know that the true English saint for the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers was Edward the Confessor. All right, cross of Saint George, the saint who Saint George is a patron is associated with what we call Georgia. Okay, the country of Georgia. All right, the cross of Alcaraz is the name given to a heraldic coat of arms and flags made up of the cross of St. George or cross of gules of argent with a moray or Moor's head in each quarter. The earliest document evidence of these arms is the rare lead seal decree from the Chancellor Peter III of Aragon, circa 1281, most likely used as the king's coat of arms, alluding to the spirit of the Crusades and his ancestral namesake. We know the Crusades were the wars between the English and the Muslims. Okay, once again, if you know the history concerning the Crusades, from the first Crusade, starting with Godfrey of Bouillon, and the 8th Crusade, going all the way back to Edward I and Louis IX. Okay, you must understand this history. Everyone see this depiction. You all seen this, right? We all assume that that's associated with nobility. It's not associated with nobility. It is associated with a status, but what status? Let's see the status, y'all. Entité cordiale. Entité cordiale. How many of you heard of that? All those, listen very close. Entité cordiale, French pronunciation, cordial agreement or cordial agreement. You call it a treaty. Comprised a series of agreements signed on 8th of April 1904 between the United Kingdom and French Republic. You hear that? The United Kingdom and the French Republic. That means the Frankish kings and the Scottish kings who rule in Great Britain, all right? And the French kings were the ones who were warned with the Plantagenet crown, which saw a significant improvement in Anglo-French relations. So the United Kingdom and French Republic had an alliance together called the Anglo-French relations. On the surface, the agreement dealt with the issues strictly related to fishing and colonial boundaries. This is also associated with the Chevron deference case because it also dealt with matters concerning fishery. Okay, which we get into in a few. The agreement dealt with the issues strictly related to fishing and colonial boundaries. Egypt was recognized as part of Britain's sphere of influence, and Morocco as part of France. Did you hear that, y'all? Did y'all hear that? Egypt was recognized as part of Britain's sphere of influence and Morocco as part of France in the 19th century. The entity was not a formal alliance and did not involve close collaboration, nor was it intended to be directed against Germany. However, it paved the way for a stronger relationship between France and Britain in the face of German aggression. It should not be mistaken for the official Anglo-French military alliance, which was only established after the outbreak of World War I in 1914. So World War I was a result of the Entente Cordiale, which was a result of the Anglo-French relation going all the way back to the times of our ancestors to this present day, as a result of what we call these alliances. All right? These alliances. Most of us don't have a clue what's going on about these alliances that were made between the Muslims and the Franks. All right? The Muslims and the Franks. Let's get there. Anglo-French. So we're talking about an agreement in 1904 between the United Kingdom and French Republic that saw significant improvement in the Anglo and French relations. That means the Anglo and French had relations prior to the Entente Cordiale or the Cordial Agreement. They already had relations. All right. Let's see what the relations encompasses. The Plantagenets are always in the picture. The historical ties between France and the United Kingdom and the countries preceded them are long and complex, including conquests, wars, and alliances at various points in history. The Roman era saw both areas largely conquered by Rome, whose fortifications largely remain in both countries to this day. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 decisively shaped the English language and led to the early conflict between the two nations. Did you hear that? Throughout the Middle Ages and the early modern period, France and England were often bitter rivals, with both nation monarchs claimed control over France, and France routinely allied against England with their other rival, Scotland, until the union of the crowns. The historical rivalry between the two nations was seated in the Capitan Plantagenet rivalry over French holdings of the Plantagenet in France. After the French victory of the Hundred-Year War, England would never again establish a foothold in French territory until this present day. Yes, it's all coming back to us. Why? Because it belonged to us. How I know that? How do I know this? Let's prove it. The entity, what it was called, the entity, Cordial was between United Kingdom and French Morocco against Germany. Why? Why? It was called the First Morocco Crisis. First Morocco Crisis, to do that. I didn't pull it up, but let me pull it up real quick. This is part of it with the Entente Cordial Agreement. The first Moroccan crisis, or the Tangier crisis, was an international crisis between March 31, 1905 and April 7, 1906 over the status of Morocco. We know Morocco was subject to what? France, and Egypt was subject to what? Britain, as a result of a great alliance going all the way back to the Anglo and French alliance, which concerned the monarchs, de facto monarchs ruling at that particular time between the United Kingdom and what we call France. Okay? Not just the jure monarch, but de facto monarch, which caused a problem we had in the 20th century. All right? Which we call World War One. All right? Which started because of the first Moroccan crisis, or the Tangier crisis, which was an international crisis between March 31st, 1905 and April 7th, 1906, over the status of Morocco. Germany wanted to challenge France's growing control over Morocco, aggravating France and Great Britain. The crisis was resolved by the Algiers Conference of 1906, a conference of mostly European countries that affirmed French control. This worsened German relations with both France and Britain and helped enhance the new Anglo-French entity. And the entity is called the Entité Cordiale. All right? That's what that is. And that started World War One. All right? World War One. You don't believe me? Let's just check it out. Abstract of the dissertation. The Yanks are coming over there. You hear that? The Yanks are coming over there. Anglo-Saxonism and American involvement in the First World War. Okay? Did y'all hear that? The First World War. All catered or involved in what we call Anglo-Saxonism. Anglo-Saxonism. So what is Anglo-Saxonism? Because when y'all hear that term, you think they're talking about us, and they're not. They're talking about those who want to be the Anglo-Saxon descendants. All right, those 13 colonies. All right, those immigrants who migrated here to the Anglosphere when we were already here. All right, let's prove it. They were called who? The white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. All right, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Let's just prove it. Anglo-Saxon in the 19th century. So they ain't talking about us. Anglo-Saxonism is a cultural belief system developed by British and American intellectuals, politicians, and academics in the 19th century. Racialized Anglo-Saxonism contained both competing and intersecting doctrines, such as the Victorian era of Old Northernism and Teutonic germ theory, which it relied upon an approaching Germanic, particularly Norse cultural and racial origin for Anglo-Saxon race, predominantly a product of certain Anglo-American societies and organizations of the era. Did y'all hear that? That was headbanger right there. That was headbanger. Predominantly a product of certain Anglo-American societies and organizations of the era, an important racial belief system in the late 19th and 20th century, British and United States thought advanced the argument that the civilization of English-speaking nations was a superior to that of any other nation because of racial traits and characteristics inherited from the Anglo-Saxon invaders of Britain. Did you hear that? From the invaders of the Anglo-Saxon invaders of Britain. So when you talk about the Anglo-Saxon invaders, you're talking about those Northmen. All right? Yes, that's what you're talking about. What group in particular are associated with them? Right here. Early reference. In 1647, English military police John Hare, who served during the Long Parliament, issued a pamphlet declaring England as a member of the Teutonic nation, a descendant out of Germany. In the context of the English Civil War, this anti-Norman and pro-Germanic paradigm has been identified as perhaps the earliest iteration of English Tuitism by Professor Nick Groom, who has suggested the 1714 Hanoverian succession, where the German House of Hanover extended. The throne of Great Britain is the culmination of this Anglo-Saxon ideology. Did you hear that? So the House of Hanover was descended from Great Britain through Queen Anne. All right, all right, and this is where the culmination of the Anglo-Saxon identity birthed into. Okay, we must understand the gravity of the situation. Right here. Political aims. Embedded in the 19th century, American Anglo-Saxonism was a growing sense that the Anglo-Saxon race had to expand into surrounding territories. This particularly expressed itself in the ideology of manifest destiny, which claimed the U.S. had a right to expand North America. Did you hear that? 1 second. Damn fly. Embedded in the 19th century, American Anglo-Saxon was a growing sense that an Anglo-Saxon race had to expand into surrounding territories. This particularly expressed itself in the ideology of a manifest destiny, which claimed the United States as a right to expand across North America. Not just North America, but around the world. You don't believe me? Let's just see. Let's go to the source. The Yanks are coming there, Anglo-Saxonism and American involvement in the First World War. The First World War. Okay? Very important. I highlighted what we're going to read. All right, hold that thought. Anglo-Saxonism is crucial to understanding the reason for the entry of the United States in the First World War. You hear that? Anglo-Saxonism is crucial to understanding the reason for the entry of the United States in the First World War. The First World War was based upon the Entente, what was called the Entente Cordial, which was a cordial agreement between United Kingdom and France based upon territory known as Morocco. Okay, all right. Well, better yet, the territories of Egypt and Morocco. All right, it was based upon the territory of Morocco that was subject to the jurisdiction of what we call France and United Kingdom. All right, that Germany saw interest in, and we know the German are those Northmen, those Vikings who invaded England. All right, we're gonna prove it. Anglo-Saxon is the belief that the people of British Isles and their descendants in the United States and the British Empire are inherently superior because of their qualities of courage, thrift, and most importantly, self-government. All right? Self-government. Anglo-Saxons originally revolved around the founding myth of the British people. Once again, Anglo-Saxonism originally revolved around the founding myth of the British people. Over the centuries, these narratives were appropriated by various interests to suit the needs of the time. The founders of the United States adapted the Anglo-Saxon myth by linking the idea of America's liberty to the ancient Anglo-Saxons who fought against their Norman oppressors. Did you hear that, y'all? Did you hear that? It can't get no better than that. All right? It can't get no better than that. By the turn of the 20th century, Anglo-Saxonism culminated with the injection of racial pseudoscientific explanation for the supremacy of the United States and the British Empire. Did you hear that? The British Empire. This is not new stuff. This is old. By the outbreak of the First World War, the United States foreign policy established appropriated Anglo-Saxonism to suit Allied war aims. By endowing the United States and Great Britain with the qualities of self-government and liberty, the war became a struggle between civilization, as represented by Allied powers, and the forces of autocracy and militarism, as represented by Germany. Did you hear that? Even though the German people had previously been considered to be close relatives of Anglo-Saxons, the militarism and reactionary ideology espoused by the Hohenzollern dynasty and the Prussian aristocracy disqualified them from the Anglo-Saxon family. Thus, the foreign policy establishment swayed the American public opinion and convinced them of a need to go to war. Did you hear that? A need to go to war. Y'all don't hear me. Y'all don't hear me. It gets better. I can't go to this whole article. I highlighted the parts we need to know. Chapter 1. The entry of the United States on the side of the Allied powers in 1970 was a turning point in the First World War. For 3 years, there had been a stalemate on both sides, particularly along the Western Front. Britain, France, and Germany, which had counted on a swift victory in 1914, instead witnessed the carnage that drained both blood and treasure. You know how I get down, Archbishop. Once the United States had East, see, you could have been here with me, bro. You could have been here blowing the spot up. You know what I'm saying? But it's good you moderating. Once the United States had cast its lot with Britain and France. You hear that? The balance had tipped in favor of the Allies. So that means that Britain and France had prior alliances before the United States even came into the damn picture. Okay? That's called the old alliances. We talked about that in classes I did months ago. All right. Once the United States had cast its lot with Britain, they took sides. Once they cast its lot with Britain and France, the balance had tipped in favor of the Allies. though the injection of fresh recruits American industrial power of Americans' credit. The addition of the United States into a rank of the Allies did not only pave the way for victory, its involvement in the First World War introduced the crusading theme of American foreign policy when President Woodrow Wilson declared that the world be made safe for democracy, which continues to have relevance in the early years of the 21st century. Y'all don't hear me. Y'all don't hear me. I'm blowing their spot up today. Their spot is getting blown up today. Who else can do this? What induced the United States to join the side of the Allies during the First World War I? What induced them? Let's see. How could the United States have entered on the side of Great Britain in 1970 when Irish Americans, German Americans, who formed significant portions of the population, were hostile to the British? By what means did the United States government convince the American public that joining the side of the Allies was a just and noble cause? How are you going to say it was a noble cause when you wasn't even noble? All right? You took the status of the noble people, which were the which were the Anglo-Saxons. You took the Anglo-Saxon and called it Anglo-Saxonism for those who were descendants of Great Britain, which were descendants of the Scottish clan, and those who were for Frankish descendants, who were descendants of the Frankish clans. All right? Nothing to do with my ancestors. All right? So these are questions posed to all you people. Anglo-Saxon could be one key to explain the American involvement in the First World War. Briefly, Anglo-Saxon is the belief that those of Anglo-Saxon origin, particularly the people of British Isles, which is a lie, and their descendants in the United States and the White Dominion, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa of the British Empire, contain virtues and qualities that made them naturally superior to other ethnic groups. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? No, y'all didn't. Among the virtues highly prized by Anglo-Saxonists, including courage, thrift, independence, and self-control, culminating into self-government, unique to these people. These qualities therefore explain the economic success of the United States and the British Empire and justify imperial expansion during the late 19th century. Anglo-Saxons had undergone an evolution throughout its long history, and over the centuries, people in both Great Britain and the United States used Anglo-Saxonism to suit the needs of the time. Did you hear that? In its original sense, Anglo-Saxonism refers to the founding myth that defines the English people during the early Middle Ages as migrations of Germanic people settled what would become England after the collapse of the Roman rule, which would be written down in documents by chroniclers such as Godfrey of Monmouth and Bede the Venerable. Such myths include the founding of the ancient Britons by survivors of the Trojan Wars and the stories of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. These early myths created a sense of national identity for an Islam populated by Anglo-Saxons and Jews. Did you hear that, y'all? This is phenomenal, I have to say. However, by the time of the Reformation by Henry VIII, these myths no longer suffice, and Anglo-Saxon was recast as part of the banner of Protestantism and the struggle against the Roman Catholic Church, most nobly illustrated by the defeat of the Spanish Armada by the English Navy and its subsequent destruction by the Protestant wind, claiming divine favor. Puritans and other groups reinterpreted the Anglo-Saxon story to denounce the deviation of Rome from the original scriptures, as well as the corrupt Stuart monarch and Anglican hierarchy that was still heavily influenced by the Catholic Church. Did you hear these bombs dropping? Because of these influences of the Calvinism exposed by English Puritans, the idea of English-speaking people as the chosen people became part of the narrative of Anglo-Saxonism, especially as they began to settle North America to create a city on a hill amidst the heathen Native Americans. Did you hear that, y'all? Did you hear that? Y'all better listen. Anglo-Saxonism would be reinterpreted by the leaders of the United States both to provide a sense of continuity from the English tradition as well as to emphasize the ideas of liberty that the ancient Anglo-Saxon represented to the founders, which would later on evolve into American exceptionalism. The leaders of the American Revolution looked into the Anglo-Saxon myth as containing the kernels of American democracy, particularly the idea of limited government, popular sovereignty before the Norman conquest in 1066, when it introduced the bondage of feudalism. Did you hear that? Did y'all hear that? You can't get no better than what I'm dropping today. All right? You don't have to call me king. I know I'm a king. The Enlightenment principles of the natural right and serve to contrast the fledgling United States from the corrupt British monarchs. They know they was corrupt. Starting in the middle of the 19th century, Anglo-Saxons shifted from its emphasis on liberty to racial ideology. The application of Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection added a pseudo-scientific component to Anglo-Saxonism, which had originally been a combination of literary and religious myth. Darwin's theory of natural selection lent an aura of scientific credence to the Anglo-Saxonism as his ideas were appropriated and adapted to classifying ethnic groups into a hierarchy with the Anglo-Saxon people at the top of the human evolutionary chain, because under their paradigm, the world has become a battleground of limited resources, with each of the races competing for survival, with the Anglo-Saxon at the most successful and utilizing those resources. Anglo-Saxonism served to promote manifest destiny, which decreed that the American descendants of Anglo-Saxons were ordained to expand from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and that the Native Americans and Mexicans who stood in their way would either be subjugated or exterminated. Did you hear that? Did you hear that, y'all? Oh my God, this is just crazy. Additionally, Anglo-Saxonism was also reinterpreted to justify Southern slavery by reinterpreting the story of Noah's children to sanction the bondage of African Americans both before and after the Civil War. You hear this? This would be detrimental to them in the court of law. As the United States engaged in large-scale industrialization, Anglo-Saxonism also reflected the fear of old stock Americans, particularly the patrician Boston elite, who feared of being overrun by the new immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe as well as Eastern Asia. These fears, coupled with the geopolitical realities of the 1880s and 1890s, would prompt a further redefinition of Anglo-Saxonism that redefinition of Anglo-Saxonism that will fit with the new international role of the United States and the aftermath of the Spanish-American War. Let's see. All right, we're gonna move from that. Let's go. Let's get some more information. All right. So why we understand the purpose and intent of the United States. We know the purpose and intent of why them aligned with United Kingdom and France as a result of the identity that they're both trying to portray as the Anglo-Saxons. Even the Germans tried to do it and they were disqualified. The Moors were trying to do it and they were disqualified. That's why you had all these conflict or wars going on. All right? So just prove it. Let's just let's just prove it. Let's go to Villain versus Harris. And Ray versus Ahmad Hassan. The decision of the Supreme Court of the United States versus Bhagat Singh Singh, and this is not even United States versus Bhagat Singh Singh. They made reference to Bhagat Singh Singh in the Ahmad Hassan, and Ray Hassan, what's his name? Ahmad Hassan case, in regards to him trying to claim himself as a white person, in regards to citizenship, which it was denied. All right, this was an Arab, this was a Moor who didn't even classify for a white person. Okay, it says here, a decision of the Supreme Court of the United States versus Bhagat Singh Singh, interpreting the statute in question, controlled the results here. In those cases, the court held that the statute imported a racial rather than an individual test. the actual color of skin of a particular individual not being decisive, that the phrase white person was generally synonymous with that of a member of the Caucasian race as a popular understood, and that the scientific or ethnological classification of races were not significant in the application of this act. So not only Moors not only Moors are not associated with ethnicity, but Arabs as well, because Arabs are Moors. White people are not classified with ethnicity because their classification in regards to citizenship is based upon the Naturalization Act, okay, which this case deals with. All right. So all those who claim to be citizens in North America, you're not a national citizen because you don't have an ethnicity. You are a naturalized citizen because you were allowed to domicile here as a result of a grant given to them by way of what we call prescription, the right to occupy, possess, and to use stuff that do not belong to you. All right? Very important. Yeah. To summarize your approach, which must be followed in deciding whether you, a particular person, are applying for citizenship, not just in this government, but your own government, wherever that government exists on some particular landmass. You should be asking yourself that question because we asked ourselves that question as Anglo-Saxons with the complexion of melanated skin. All right, not the identity of that classification based upon the color of skin, which is what we call Negro, Black, Colored, or Ethiopian. All right. To summarize the approach which must be followed in deciding whether a particular person applying for citizenship is a white person within the meaning of the Naturalization Act, i.e., the statute, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, it is necessary to determine first a particular group or racial subdivision to which the individual belongs. In practical effect, proof of this fact is a matter of genealogy. An individual who presented an aberration from the color of skin of the group of which he is a member, such as a light skinned Chinese or Japanese or a dark skinned Anglo Saxon, does not thereby acquire a different status under the Act from other members of that group. So if you claim to be a group, part of this group, which we call Anglo-Saxon Berbers, you just can't do it based off your color of skin. You got to prove it that you are in fact related to that group of people, denoting to your ethnicity. Okay? We are Anglo-Saxon Berbers. All right? Of course, when an individual applying for citizenship has the skin of a different color than is usual for a member of the group from which he claims to come, a strong burden of proof then rests upon him to show by the usual methods of proving genealogy that he is in fact a member of that group. After the individual has been traced into his group, the second question must be interpreted, of what the court must answer is whether the members of the group as a whole are white person as Congress understood it in the term in 1790 when it first enacted the naturalization statute. And deciding the latter question in regards to the statute concerning naturalization of those who are called white person, contrast to those who are called colored person, such as that Arab who, based upon uh, his um, his matter brought before the court has decided, and I read it from the record, and deciding the latter question, the test is not how the group in question will be classified by ethnologists who had made a study of the racial origin, but rather what group of people then living in 1790 with the characteristics then existing were intended to be by Congress to be classified as a white person. Applying these principles, the court finds that petitioner is an Arab and the Arabs are not white persons within the meaning of this act. Did y'all hear that? So if the Arab is not a white person, then the Arab cannot be a citizen. If black people are not white persons, then black people cannot be citizens. If Moors are not white people, then Moors cannot be citizens. I don't care how much or how hard you try to make yourself a citizen. It's impossible. Did you hear me? It is impossible. Let's qualify it. Franco. All right. Franco is a common surname in Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Sephardic Jewish communities, deriving the word Frank in reference to the Germanic tribe of the Franks who invaded Gaul during the migration period. It is also commonly used as given names of Italian. I repeat, Franco is a common surname in Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Sephardic Jewish communities, deriving the word Frank in reference to the Germanic tribes of the Franks who invaded Gaul during the migration period. So, what is the migration period? Well, mind doing another couple. Migration period, circa 300 AD to 600 AD. All right, this is antiquity at its greatest. Migration period, also known as the barbarian invasion, was a period of European history marked by large-scale migration that saw the fall of the Western Roman Empire and subsequent settlement of its former territories by various tribes and the establishment of the post-Roman kingdom. Did you hear that? Who do we have here? We have the Franks, the Saxons, the Angles, the Jutes, all right, the Goths, Huns, the Vandals, the Huns, the Ostrogoths, you got all these people here. All the people considered Vikings, Northmen, barbarians are all the same people because they're associated with the term Franco. And Franco is a surname denoting to people who lived in Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Sephardic, who are Jewish communities deriving from the word Frank, and reference to the Germanic tribe of the Franks who invaded Gaul during the migration period. What are Franks? Let's just clear this up real quick. The Franks are descendants of the Merovingian dynasty, which descended from the Carolingian dynasty, which descended down from Clovis I, who never claimed to be descendants of God, like the Anglo-Saxon people. We already read in the 1911 encyclopedia that the Moors don't have an ethnicity, as we've seen in the case law in Ray versus Hassan, in Ray Ahmad versus Hassan. But we see that the Berbers do. Not only do they have an ethnicity, they have a government called Wittenmont, and they have a code of law, uncoded law, called the Magna Carta. Okay? And they were called Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Why is that? Okay? Why is that? We must understand why. We know why because of what we call Anglo-Saxonism. All right? Anglo-Saxonism, which was a history borrowed from the true people who lived the true history. All right? We must understand what's going on. All right? So let's go to this case. These are all the alliances that the Frankish kings made. We say Franco, we saying Frankish. All right? We saying Franco, Frankish is saying North, Nordic, or Northman. Same people. Now look at all these alliances, y'all. All the alliance was the alliance between the Kingdom of Scotland, France against England, made in 1295. But the alliances go back even further. The first alliances made between France and the Muslims were the Frankish and opposite alliances. All right. Then the Frankish and Mongol alliances. All right. Keep going. Franco-Scots alliance, Franco-Polish alliance, Franco-Hungarian, Franco-Ottoman, Franco and English. When they say English, they ain't talking about Anglo-Saxon bourbon. They're talking about the Scottish kings. Franco and Indian, Franco and British, Franco-Spanish, Franco and Prussian, Franco and Austrian, Franco and Indian alliance, Franco-Vietnamese alliance. Let's keep going. Franco-American alliance, Franco-Persian alliance, Franco-Prussian alliance, Franco-Austrian alliance, Franco-Russian alliance, and what do we get to? Entente cordiale. All right? That was the alliance between United Kingdom and France and the result of the territory of Morocco that Germany wanted. Okay? That Germany wanted. Why? Because when we go back to Frankish, what did it say? Franco or Frankish, the same name. Is a common surname in Italy, Portugal, Spain. Why? Because we know that the Frankish kings made alliances with what? Spanish kings, which you get Portugal and Spain. Okay? And we know, or Aragon, the crown of Aragon, because the crown of Aragon birthed the crown of Castile. And we know the crown of Castile is where you get King Ferdinand III, the king of Castile, whose daughter was Elizabeth of Eleanor of Castile, who married who? Edward the First, the son of Henry III, the Plantagenet king. How do I know that? So we see that the order line going all the way back to 777 AD with the Frankish kings and the Muslim kings were based upon migrations that to land that didn't belong to them through the migration period, or what they call the barbarian invasion. Then they call it the barbarian invasion, i.e., the Barbary Coast. There you see it right here. Let me blow that up for you. Look at the concentration of where the start of the invasions took place. Yellow is the Angles and Saxons, orange is the Franks, red is the Goths, purple is the Visigoths, the light purple is the Ostrogoths, green is the Huns, blue is the Vandals, and red is the Gales. All right, look at them, and you know what the parts of. You show the point of exertion and the point of contact. All right, all stemming from northeastern part of what we call Europe. All right, we see it right there. All this is the Iberian Peninsula. Everybody see that. This is the barbarian invasion, the migration period of the barbarians based upon those alliances, which are going all the way back to Franco. And we know that the alliance with the Franco were alliance with the Spanish, or the what they said, the Spanish, uh, Portugal, and we know Portugal and Spanish has to do with Spain. So hence the word Moors or Moranos, because the word or the Spanish word for Moor is Moranos. All right, very important for you to understand that. But once again, the migration period, also known as the barbarian invasion, was a period in European history marked by large-scale migration that saw fall of the Western Roman Empire and subsequent settlements of its former territory by various tribes and the establishment of the post-Roman kingdom. This is called diaspora. All right? This is called a diaspora. All right? A migration from your homeland to somewhere else. All right? Let's get there. Now let's talk about the Chevron deference. Okay, Chevron deference. I'm not going to stay too long on that. On this, we're just going to highlight it because it's paramount to the Anglo-Saxons' history on the justification on why the Chevron deference was overruled. Okay, very important because it has to deal with the power that was taken from the executive branch, created by the executive branch, and passed to a de facto corporation created by the executive branch. Once again, under what we call the administrative law. We know under administrative law or administrative regulations created by administrative agencies and their departments as a result of the authority granted to them by the executive branch, which is the third branch of our government. All right? Very important for you to understand this. Let's get to it. Chevron deference is referring to the doctrine of judicial deference given to the administration action. It was coined after the landmark case Chevron USA Incorporated versus Natural Resource Defense Council Incorporated. In Chevron, the Supreme Court set forth legal tests as to when the court should defer to the agency's answers or interpretations, holding that such judicial deference is appropriate where the agency's answers was not unreasonable, so long as Congress had not spoken directly to the precise issue at question. When they say questions, they talk about questions in regards to law and fact, not fact of evidence. All right, fact of evidence, evidentiary fact, and legal fact. I mean, and the fact of law is two different things. The executive department does not have the authority to decide on questions of law. That authority was passed to the judiciary branch, i.e., all right, the third branch of our government, to uphold the laws of the legislative branch and not to uphold the laws created by a department created by the executive branch. That's a violation of law. Okay? So, of all those who fall into that practice, you're in trouble. All right? You're in trouble. This is not a benefit to the American people as a result of the the checking of the power that was unlawfully given to the administrative agencies through the executive branch created by your president. This does not benefit naturalized citizens. It does not benefit American citizens. It does not benefit Native Americans. It does not benefit Moors, Jews, or any other immigrant that migrated to this continent for some type of liberty. Because the liberties that this continent had was taken from somebody else. Who did they take it from? The Anglo-Saxon Berbers. You read it for yourself. Let's get there. What was the holding of the court? There. The Administrative Procedure Act requires courts to exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority, and courts may not defer to an agency's interpretation of the law simply because a statute is ambiguous. All right? Chevron is overruled. Chevron is overruled. Why is the Chevron case overruled? Why did they allow the Chevron doctrine to come about in the first place? All right, because through the Chevron decree, it allowed departments created by the agencies to create departments known as departments created by the executive branch, which you call the federal government. All right, so it's very important that through the overruling of the Chevron deference case that all the authority given to the executive departments of the executive branch has now been null and void. All right, they now got a tombstone placed at the head of their grave. You don't believe me? Let's prove it. What is the Administrative Procedure Act? Let's just do that real quick. This fly is getting on my nerves. I guess he wanted to be a fly on the wall, huh? Administrative Procedure Act. Just the historical background. That's all we need. Beginning in 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt and the Democratic Congress enacted several statutes that created new federal agencies as part of a New Deal legislative plan, not from the legislative branch, but they created through the executive branch a legislative package where they don't have the authority to do. Establishing to guide the United States through the social and economic hardship caused by what? The Great Depression. However, the Congress became concerned about the expanding of powers that these autonomous federal agencies now possess, resulting in the enactment of the APA to regulate, standardize, and oversee these federal agencies. Okay? So, what federal agencies did the APA oversee in regards to the creation of the APA? Do checks and balance, all right? In the era of the Franklin D. Roosevelt, due to what we call the New Deal, all right? What are these agencies? What are some of the agencies that we need to examine in regards to the changes that are about to come into fruition? All right, let's see. United States federal executive departments are the principal units of the executive branch of the federal government of the United States. They are analogous to ministries, common and parliamentary and semi-presidential systems, but the United States being a presidential system, they are led by a head of government who is also the head of state. The executive department are the administrative arms of the president of the United States. There are currently 15 executive departments. Let's do them. Current departments: the state, treasury, Interior, Department of Interior, Agriculture, the Justice Department, Commerce, Labor, Defense, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Transportation, Energy, Education, Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security. All these agencies and their departments are affected by this Chevron deference overruling. All these agencies are being affected, but nobody knows why. They're not even going to tell you why when you watch it on YouTube. They're not going to tell you why when you hear about it on the news. You're not going to tell you why when you hear it talked about by all these so-called uh, uh, analysts. All right, these doctors of law. They're not going to tell you the reason why. It's not to their best interest to tell you why that these changes are taking effect. All right, not just in the main departments, but other departments. Let's see. Let's continue. Department of War, Army, the Air Force, the Navy, Post Office, Commerce and Labor, Health and Educational Welfare. All right? All these agencies and their departments and the policies and the rulemakers that they do based upon the authority that was given to them by way of an executive act created by a president, all right? And the authority given to them by an act of the president was the ability to be able to create legislation by way of the ambiguity in the statute that was not clear when the statute was enacted. Okay? And it was the job of the courts to decide if there was any ambiguity in the statute. But of course, the courts passed that job off to the executive department, since it was the executive department who created the courts. All right, we must understand the game that's being played. All right, all this came about through the administrative law. Okay, What is administrative law? Okay? What is administrative law? Because we got administrative law for administrative courts. We got constitutional law for constitutional courts. All right? We got administrative law for administrative court for administrative officers. All right? We got constitutional court for constitutional law for constitutional officers. All right? And constitutional officers are not elected, they're appointed. Okay? They are appointed. Administrative law is a division of law governing the activities of the executive branch agencies of government. Administrative law includes executive branch rulemaking. Executive branch rules are generally referred to as regulations. They are not law. They are regulations, adjudication, and the enforcement of law. Administrative law is considered a branch of public law. They should have said positive law. Okay? That's what they should have said. Positive law. Why I say that? Let's go to the actual case law regarding the intent for the overruling of the Chevron deference, and let's see the reason why it was overruled, and see why they're not telling you why the Chevron deference case was overruled. All right, they stuck it in the ruling, but didn't expound upon it. Why? Because if they did, then they would be telling on themselves. All right, they put it right out there for you can see it, and only people who can see the corruptness are the people who the corruptness was done on. All right, and that was done on the English people by way of contradicting what the actual common law established here in what we call North America. Let's prove it. So, administrative law. Administrative law is a division of law governing the activities of the executive branch of government. Administrative law includes executive branch rulemaking, adjudicating, and enforcement of those laws. Administrative law is considered a branch of public law. Let me see what else I can read off this. Administrative laws for administrative courts for administrative judges. All right, very important that you understand this. All right, so this is dealing on the federal level. All right. Is also dealing on the state level. All right. In particular, the state of New Jersey does not go by constitutional law because it has no constitutional courts. All the constitutional courts were overridden by the 1947 Constitution, which is a violation of the district court ruling in Villain versus Harris. All right. Let's see. New Jersey, Office of Administrative Law. Right there, State of New Jersey, Office of Administrative Law. Security of the administrative law. Safety and security is of the utmost importance of the Office of Administrative Law. It is the policy of the Office of Administrative Law that threats and threatening behavior, harassment and intimidation, physical acts of violence, and intentional property damage committed either in the Office of Administrative Law facilitate or in the performance of the work duties outside the Office of Administrative Law premises will not be tolerated. So all the authority established and limited by the Constitution, regulated by the Constitution and Congress, which is the wishes that the Constitution established, have now been passed on to an administrative agency by authority that didn't have the authority to pass on that authority into the administrative agencies called administrative law. All right, bodies of administrative officers and their administrative courts. This is all a violation of law. Why? Let's see. And now they're mad now, right? We see the state of New Jersey has an office of administrative law, but now as a result of the Chevron doctrine overruling, they mad. They're mad now. They're upset. Not just the state of New Jersey, but every state. But let's look at the state of New Jersey. Statement from Governor Murphy on the U.S. Supreme Court latest power grab by overruling Chevron doctrine. All right, let's see. Let's see what he said. Once again, the Supreme Court far-right majority is proving why the American people trust in our higher courts and is at an all-time low. All right. With today's decision overturning the Chevron doctrine, the majority has wiped out the majority parts. Let me read this again. Once again, the Supreme Court far-right majority is proving why the American people trust in our higher courts is at an all-time low. With today's decision, that means you people are stupid if you call yourself American, if you're depending on the government to protect your interests, because the Supreme Court telling your government, excuse my expression, it's full of shit. All right? It said, with today's decision overturning the Chevron doctrine, the majority has wiped out 4 decades of legal precedent and severely diminished the federal government's ability to protect the health and well-being of our nation's family. You ain't no nation. You're a naturalized family, not a national family. These rulings will allow unelected judges across America to single-handedly overrule the science-informed, evidence-based decisions made by the experts working within our federal agency. It will have a vast and potentially disastrous impact on a wide range of issues, from climate changes to workplace safety standards to gun safety and beyond. It is yet another instance of the far-right majority ripping away the power entrusted to the legislative and executive branches, as well as the state's government. You hear that? In order to proclaim itself as the final decision maker on issues that directly impact the daily lives of American families, which would mean it is the final decision maker, the courts of law, not your executive departments, which you so highly speak of, because when you mention the legislative and executive branch under the same breath, you're talking about the laws that were created called legislation by the executive branch, which are not laws because the executive branch doesn't have the authority to make laws. Their job is to execute the laws that they didn't make. You hear what I'm saying? Despite this morning rulings here in New Jersey, we will continue crafting policies based on science, expertise, and data. At the pivotal moment, the people of New Jersey are counting on our state's leaders to push back against ideological driven power grabs by leading with restraint and reason. Did you hear this? Did you hear this? He's mad it was coming down the pipe. What's coming down the pipe? The English heirs and successors, now called Anglo-Saxon Berbers. We are back, y'all. Why? Because the case law said that was the purpose and intent for the changing of the Chevron difference as a result of the origin of where Sterdices just came down from. All right? Because he just said they're going to overturn 40 years of Sterdices created by them. And they ain't even the government. So your prejudice don't mean nothing because it has nothing to do with the common law for the common people. It does with your citizens, but not our citizens. All right? Let's get it. Bellin versus Harris. New Jersey First Constitution, adopted July 2nd, 1776, terminated its status as an English colony. It began its sovereign existence as a state. Article 22 as a state. Article 22 of that Constitution continued the common law of England in force. That Constitution was replaced by the Constitution of 1844, modeled largely in structure and content on the Constitution of the United States. Did you hear that? So the New Jersey's 1844 Constitution was modeled largely in lieu of the United States Constitution, was preceded by New Jersey's July 2nd, 1776 Constitution, all right, which all states the same thing, that they are going to continue the common law. And what common law of that? Not the common law created by the executive branch called Sterdices, but the common law of England where Sterdices originated from, all right? The Constitution was replaced by the Constitution of 1844, modeled largely in structure and content on the Constitution of the United States. By Article 10, Paragraph 1, it too continued to enforce the common law, as well as the existing courts of law and equity. So also the current Constitution of 1947 by Article 11, Section 1, Paragraph 3, continue to enforce all existing law. But we just seen that under the 1947 Constitution that the Constitution of New Jersey, as stated by the New Jersey Supreme Court, now function under what we call the administrative courts under administrative law by way of the 1947 Constitution, which is contradictory to the Villain versus Harris case that we're reading right now. Because it said that the 1947 Constitution, the United States Constitution of the United States, and the 1844 Constitution was no different than the July 2nd, 1776 Constitution of New Jersey. And this is what it said. It said it was long ago settled that the former Supreme Court, as established by the Constitution of 1844, was vested with all the powers of the King's bench, which the legislature was powerless to cut down or to assign to other courts. Isn't that what the Chevron deference overruling was about? About passing authority of the authority that the courts have to departments that don't have the authority that the court should have? Wasn't that what that case was about? You see it right here. All right. The only thing missing is the king and his bench. All right. The principle was especially strong in the fields of prerogative writ because this case we're going to read, in lieu of the overruling of the Chevron deference, was based upon a writ of certiorari. All right. A writ of certification. That's the prerogative writ of the crown. A petitioner, a petition by way of a writ of certiorari, and the result was the overruling of the Chevron doctrine, okay? And the Chevron doctrine was the result of giving authority to agencies and allow them to interpret the statutes when there is ambiguity in the statute based off the interpretation of the statute that the courts failed to do. Because they said, based upon the Chevron deference, that if there is any ambiguity, that they're going to go with what the agencies say and not what they see that's actually different from their interpretation. Okay? Very important for you to understand that. The complexity of technicalities. All right, so it says here, the same writ was issued too, and that in the that caused the Chevron deference overruling. A writ of certiorari, which we see here, it said it was long ago settled that the former Supreme Court, as established by the Constitution of 1844, was vested with the powers of the King's bench, which was the legislature with powers to cut down or to assign to other courts. This principle was especially strong in the field of prerogative writs, of which a writ of certiorari was one of the most frequently sought. Right? You see that. Now watch what it says. The complexities and technicalities involving the prerogative writs, including the writ of certiorari, induced the draftment of the 1947 Constitution to erase the procedural necessities while preserving the judicial authority and the remedies. This was achieved by a single sentence. What is that sentence? Let's read it. Prerogative writs are superseded in lieu thereof, reviewing, hearing, and relief shall be afforded and Superior Court on terms and the manner provided by the rules of the Supreme Court as a right and except in criminal causes where review shall be at discretionary. New Jersey Constitution, Article 6, Section 5, Section 5, Paragraph 4. Okay? So as we can see here, because of the technicalities and the what they say, the technicalities and the complexities that they didn't deal with the prerogative writs, which was the royal prerogative of the king, because why? There was no king. There wasn't no king. There was no king, so how could you use prerogatives of the king? You got to take the king out the picture. All right? So let's go to the case, all right, in closing. Let's go to the case in closing in regards to the reason why all the authorities that were given to the courts, the administrative courts, all right? When we say administrative court, we're talking about EEO commission, all right? We're talking about the what you call the commission for judicial rules of judicial code of conduct. All right, these are agencies created to take the place of the actual courts. All right, we must understand the game that's being played on you. All right. Let's go to the court case in closing. First of all, if we go to New Jersey court, all right, because we just said all the power at the Supreme Court was given to New Jersey Superior Court, all right? And on New Jersey Superior Court website, you call New Jersey Courts, concerning the origination of the common law, it says right here, Being one of the original 13 colonies, New Jersey has been strongly influenced by the English law and the Anglo-Saxon tradition. The three branches of government enshrined in the United States Constitution and the New Jersey Constitution are derived from English history. The king was the executive branch. You hear that? Not the president. All right. Not the board of commissioners. None of these people. It's just the king was the executive branch, parliament the legislative branch, and the courts the judicial branch. It was an English judiciary that a formal civilized system for resolving disputes and addressing crime originated among English speaking people. It was in the early courts in England that the common law took root and evolved into our current system of courts, judges, and juries. The common law we know it today dates back to the 12th and 13th century and derived from the reign of King Henry II, son of Godfrey, the fifth Calabrian Jew, son of Folk, Lord of Jerusalem, where I descended down based upon my heraldic surname, who appointed judges to resolve disputes among his subjects, which you are. You are subjects of the king. Right now, you don't have a king as a result of you not giving homage to your king. All right? So, in closing, let's go to the nook and cranny. Loper Bright Enterprise versus Raimondo. All right. This is the case that had the Chevron deference annulled. This case right here. Supreme Court, United States. Everybody hold this thought for a second. This is in closing. We know a Chevron is a heraldic symbol as well. Is a Chevron is a upside down V. All right, upside down V. That's called a chevron. All right. We know chevron uh, is um is also symbolic of the Berber symbol. Let's see. Berber history, family, crest, and coats of arms concerning heraldry, not Moors. I can see here. The history of the name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribes of Britain, not Morocco, not Africa, but Britain. All right, just the same thing they said in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, contrary to what they said in the 1911 Britannica about Moors, who had no ethnicity. All right, as you can see here in the ancient arms of Moor, you see the chevrons. All right, with three fleur de lises in it. All right, we know based off of the entité cordial that Morocco was subject to what we call the territory of France, and Egypt was subject to the territory of Great Britain, which caused the entité cordial. All right, we must understand this. All right, you see it. Berber. This is name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribes of Britain. It is derived from the baptismal name meaning son of Barbara. In some instances, the name may have been a nickname for someone such as the Moor or Berber who appeared to be a North African heritage. It is in some cases a name in reference to the Barbary coast or North Africa. Okay, and the name originated in what we call London, right there. Everybody see that? Okay. Let's go back to the case. Hold that thought, everyone. I'm back, y'all. How's everybody enjoying the lesson thus far? Somebody let me know how they enjoying the lesson. Good to have you, brother Noonley from the House of Noonley. This is the court granted a circulator, in this case, limited to the question whether Chevron uh, U.S.A. Incorporated versus Natural Resource Defense Council Incorporated should be overruled or clarified. Under the Chevron doctrine, courts have sometimes been required to defer to permissible agencies' interpretation of the statutes those agencies administer, even when a reviewing court reads the statute differently. You hear that? So they are to take the word of agency's interpretation of a statute when the statute is ambiguous, and even though when they interpret the statute different than the agency's interpreted, they're still gonna go with the agency's interpretation. Now, tell me, ain't that crazy? Tell me that ain't crazy. No problem, brother Newly. This is what we do. All right. So it says that the court granted a circulator in this case, limited to the question whether it should that the Chevron deference should be overruled or clarified. Under the Chevron doctrine, courts have sometimes been required to defer to the permissible agencies, allow agencies' interpretation of the statutes those agencies administer, even when the reviewing court reads the statute differently. So even though the court sees that the interpretation of the statute is different, they're going to take the reviewing agency's interpretation's word for it. All right, you hear that? That's crazy. In each case below, the reviewing courts applied the Chevron framework to resolve in favor of the government's challenge by petitioners to rule promulgated by the National Marine Fisheries Service pursuant to the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which incorporated the Administrative Procedure Act through Title V United States Code Section 551. Okay? What was the decision held? Held that the Administrative Procedure Act requires courts to exercise their independent judgment and deciding whether an agency has acted within the statutory authority, and courts may not defer to any agency's interpretation of the law simply because the statute is ambiguous. You hear that? Did y'all hear that? Very, very, very simple. That means that all your EEO commissions, all your arbitrary forms are null and void now. They don't matter. Because when it gets to the Supreme Court, it will be overturned. All right? It ain't even got to get to the Supreme Court if you understand law like we do. All right? Why? Why do I say this? Let's see. This is in this case. Article 3 of the Constitution assigns to the federal judiciary the responsibility and power to adjudicate cases and controversies, concrete disputes with consequences for the parties involved. Did you hear that? Did y'all hear that? For the parties involved. The framers appreciated the laws of judges would necessarily the framers appreciated the law of judges would necessarily apply in resolving those disputes would not always be clear by a vision, but envision that the final interpretation of the law would be the proper and peculiar province of the courts. The Federalist number 78, page 525, Hamilton, as Chief Justice Marshall declared in the foundational decision on Marbury versus Madison, it emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. In the decades following Marbury, when the meaning of the statute was a issue, the judicial role was to interpret the act of Congress in order to ascertain the rights of the party. So Congress, so it says, in decades following Marbury, when the meaning of the statute was at issue, the judicial role, i.e., the court's role, was to interpret the act of Congress, not some agency or some department created by the agency through the executive department, but the official legislation created by Congress in order to ascertain the statute that derived from a legislation created by Congress. You understand that? The court recognized from the outset, though, that exercising independent judgment often included, according to due respect, the executive branch interpretation of the federal statute. Such respect was thought especially warranted when an executive branch interpretation was issued roughly contemporaneously with enactment of the statute and remained consistent over the time. So I mean contemporaneously means about the same time. The court also gave the most respectful consideration to the executive branch interpretation simply because the officers concerned were usually able men and masters on the subject who may well have drafted the laws at issue. All right. So the reason why they went to school, went to law school, Harvard, and all the other stuff, so they can be masters, can be the learned ones, so that they can create the law for the people who are ignorant. All right. Very simple. So the court also gave the most respectful means deference. Deference means submission, respect. All right. It says the court also gave the most respectful consideration to the executive branch interpretations simply because the officers concerned were usually able men and masters of the subject who may well have drafted the laws itself. United States versus Moore. Respect though, was just that. The views of the executive branch could inform the judgment of the judiciary, but not supersede it. You hear that? It said respect, though, was just that. It was just respect. The views of the executive branch could inform the judgment of the judiciary, but do not supersede it. In cases where a court-owned judgment differed from that of other higher functionary, the court was not at liberty to surrender or to waive its authority. Okay? Through the rapid expansion of the administration process that took place during the New Deal, the court often treated agencies' determinations of fact as binding on the court, providing that there was evidence to support the finding. You hear that? Evidence to support the finding. But the court did not extend similar deference to agencies' resolutions of the questions of law. They can refer to it based off fact finding, but based off resolutions concerning questions of law, that was left to the courts. All right. The interpretation of the meaning of the statute as applied to justiciable controversies remain exclusively to judicial functions. Did you hear that? Judicial functions. The court also continued to note that the informed judgment of the executive branch could be entitled to great weight. The weight of such judgment in a particular case, the court observed, would depend upon the thoroughness evident in its consideration, the validity of its reasoning, its consistency with earlier and later pronouncements, and all those factors which give it power to persuade if lacking power to control. Did you hear that, y'all? Occasionally during this period, the courts applied deferential review after concluding that a particular statute empowered an agency to decide how a broad statute term applied to specific facts found by the agency. But such a differential review, which the court was for, which was, but such differential review, which the court was far from consistent in applying, was cabined to fact-bound determination, and the court did not purport to refashion the long-standing judicial approach to questions of law. You hear that? Only fact-finding concerning evidence, but not in regards to concerning questions of law. It instead proclaimed that undoubtedly questions of statutory interpretation are for the courts to resolve, giving appropriate weight to the judgment of those whose speedy duty is to administer the question statute. Nothing in the New Deal era or before it does resemble the deference rule the court would begin applying decades later to all varieties of agencies' interpretations of statutes under the Chevron, page 7 through 13. I need to read that. Congress in 1946 enacted the Administrative Procedure Act as a check upon administrators whose zeals might otherwise have carried them to the excess to contemplative legislation created through their office. I read that again. Congress in 1946 enacted the APA as a check upon administrators whose zeals might otherwise have carried them to excessive, not contemplated in legislative creating their office. The APA prescribes procedures for agencies' actions and delineates the basic contours of judicial review of such actions, and it codifies for agencies' cases the unremarkable yet elemental proportions reflected by judicial practice dating back to Marbury. That courts decide legal questions by applying their own judgment. As relevant here, the APA specifies that courts, not agencies, would decide all relevant questions of law arising on review of agencies' actions. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? All right. Now, why is that so? Let's get in closing our concurrence by Judge Gorsuch, one of the Supreme Court judges in this matter, in the concurrence. We had another concurrence by Chief Justice what's that guy's name? Thomas, what's his name? The for lack of a better word, the black brother. What was his name? Judge. One second. Well, you know, there's only one black judge in the Supreme Court, so and we're gonna call him black because that's how he acting as a black person, and not as a national, because he's not upholding national law. So we can look to Supreme Court for the judicial members, and you will see Judge Thomas, Chief Justice Thomas. All right, I think that's one of his names, either his first or last name, Chief Justice Thomas. All right, but we're going to read the review based off Justice Gorsuch. All right, in regards to not just the upheld decision on the overruling of the Chevron deference, but as well as his concurrence on the reason for the overruling of the Chevron deference case, which takes the power from the agencies created by the executive branch and restore it back to the executive branch as tailored by the Constitution. All right, very important. We read this in closing, page 59. This fly is getting on my nerves. I'm gonna take you out as soon as I'm finished. So you better find a spot. That fly off the chain. I guess he want to hear this message though. I'll let you hang out till the message is over. Page 59. In closing, all right? You sweating? So it's out of your face. Here we go. This fly is getting on my nerves. I'm fighting with a fly on the thing, and he's not moving, dude. You can hang out, just stay out of my way. So until I'm finished. Same case, all right? This is the concurrence on this matter from one of the judges in the Supreme Court, which will be uh, from Justice Gorsuch. All right, his concurrence on the reason why the Chevron deference was overruled. And only reason why I'm referring to Justice Gorsuch is because he's the only one who took the balls to mention the true reason why the case was overruled. Everybody else is speaking about it ambiguously. All right, they don't really want to touch on the true subject or why the power was returned back to the executive branch based upon the authority granted by the Constitution to go based off the laws that were created by the legislative branch based off the true origin where it actually stemmed from, as tailored by Justice Gorsuch in my closing. Concurrent in closing. Justice Gorsuch concurs. In disputes between individuals and the government about the meaning of a federal law, federal courts have traditionally sought to offer independent judgment about what the law is without favor to either side. Beginning in the mid 1980s, however, this court experimented with a radically different approach. Applying the Chevron deference, judges began deferring to the views of executive agencies officials about the meaning of the federal statute. See Chevron, United States of America Incorporated versus Natural Resources Defense Council Incorporated. With time, the era of this approach became widely appreciated. So much so that this court has refused to apply the Chevron deference since 2016. Today, the court placed a tombstone. You hear that? Placed a tombstone on the Chevron no one can miss. In doing so, the court returned judges to interpret rules that have guided federal courts since the nation's founding. I write separately to address why the proper application of the doctrine of stare decisis supports that course. Y'all better hold on to your seat. Today, the phrase common law judge may call to mind a judicial titan of the past who brilliantly devised new laws, brilliantly devised new legal rules on his own. The phrase Seradices might conjure up a sense that judges who come later in time are strictly bound to follow the road of their predecessors. But neither of those intuitions fairly describes traditional common law understanding of the judge's role or the doctrine of Seradices. At common law, a judge's charge to decide cases was not usually understood as a license to make new laws. You hear that? For much of England's early history, different rulers and different legal systems prevailed in different regions. As England consolidated into a single kingdom governed by a single legal system, the judge's task was to examine these pre-existing legal traditions and apply in the disputes that came to him and those legal rules that were common to the whole land and to all Englishmen. Did you hear that, y'all? Did you hear that? That was common law judging. You hear that? That was common law judging. This view of the judge's role has consequences for the authority to do judicial decisions because a judge's job was to find and apply the law, not make it. The opinion of judges in the law was not considered one and the same thing. William Blackstone's commentary. A judge's decision might bind the parties to the case at hand, but none of that meant that judges had the power to make law properly so called for society at large. For that only the king and parliament can do. Did you hear that, y'all? Only king and parliament can do. Other consequences followed the role presidents played in the future judicial proceedings. Because past decisions represented something less than the law, they did not bind future judges. At the same time, as Matthew Hale puts it, a future judge could give a past decision weight as evidence of the law. Expressing the same idea, William Blackstone conceived of judicial precedents as evidence of the common law. And much like other forms of evidence, precedents at common law were thought to vary in the weight due to them. Some past decisions might supply future courts with considerable guidance, but others might be entitled to lesser weight, not least because judges are no less prone to error than anyone else, and they may sometimes mistake what law demands. Emphasize deleted. In case like that, most men thought a future judge should not rotely repeat a past mistake, but instead vindicate the law from misrepresentation. Did you hear that? From misrepresentation. In closing, the constrained view of the judicial power that runs through our Constitution carries with it familiar implications, ones the framers readily acknowledge. Jade Madison, for example, proclaimed that it would be a falsely to suggest that judges or their presidents could repeal or alter the Constitution or the laws of the United States. What is it? A court opinions, James Wilson added, may be thought of as an ineffective law as to the parties. But as in England, Wilson said a prior judicial decision could serve in a future dispute only as evidence of the law proper construction. Did you hear that? Only of the law's proper construction. The framers also recognize that the judicial power described in our Constitution implies as the judicial power did in England, a power and duty of discrimination when it comes to assessing the evidence embodied in past decisions. For example, Madison observed that judicial rulings repeatedly confirmed may supply better evidence of the law meaning than isolated or aberrant ones. As I come to my closing, from the start to American courts recognized that not everything found in a prior decision was entitled to equal weight. As Chief Justice Marshall warned, it is a maximum not to be disregarded that general expression is in every opinion ought to be taken in connection with the case in which those expressions are used. To the extent a past court offered views beyond the case, those expressions may be respected in a later case, but ought not to control the judgment. In later cases, but ought not to control the judgment. One obvious reason for this, Marshall continued, had to do with the limits of the adversarial process we inherited from England. Only the questions actually before the court is investigated with care and considered in its full extent. Other principles which may serve to illustrate it are considered in their relation to the case decided, but their possible bearing on all other cases is seldomly completely investigated. I think that's it. Let me make sure. Yes, that's it. So in closing, we understand that New Jersey represents the crown. Okay? New Jersey represents the crown. The crown authority is indefinite. Okay? The crown authority is definite. We know the crown authority, which is definite, governs the land. Okay, not just in New Jersey, but in the United States. Okay, because it's all part of what we call the public domain, or what we call world domain. All right, or damsne. All right, we understand that it's part of what we call the royal domain because it's a part of what we call the allodial land. Okay, and we know that the allodial land was allodial before the Norman conquest by the Anglo-Saxon kings prior to those English, Nordic, Northmen, Vikings, known also as Frankish kings. So we see here in closing, immediately following the Norman conquest of 1066, all land in England was claimed by the king, William the Conqueror, as his absolute title by allodial right, being the commitment of the royal damsel, also called crown land. The king may grant a very large tract of land under various forms of feudal tinkers from his damsel, generally in this form of feudal baron. That includes overseas territories as well. The land not so in fiefs, for example, was called royal manors, administered by the royal stewards and the royal hunting forest, thus remained within the royal damsel. In the Doomsday Book of 1086, this land is referred to literally terra region, literally called the King's Land. And in English common law, the term ancient damsel refers to the land that was held by the crown at the time of the Doomsday Book. And we know that New Jersey authority under the crown is indefinite from the time going back to the Doomsday Book until this present day. Okay? Until this present day. So with that, I say all that to say is that all you Moors and every other people that are not associated with any ethnic group here in North America, because North America is not based off an ethnic group. It's just based off a social construct. All right, people acting as a civil body, but had nothing to do with God, nor God's government, nor God's people. Okay. God's government, God's people, God's law are very important and is needed for your earthly salvation here in this present day. All right. So don't have the perception like we all or at one time had in regards to our nobility without tracing that nobility back further than we have done in this present day. So with that, I'm gonna greet you as I meet you, and that's always in peace and love. So I open the floor for questions for all those who have questions. If none, then I'm going to greet you as I immediately, as stated, nonetheless. So Archbishop, as a notice, once this lecture is posted, please post the template so this lecture can reflect the actual template in regards to horology and magnifying Moore's horology from its true and divine origin. What was the title again? Magnifying Moorish history from a heredity point of view. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna close. Actually, the time is 10:111. So that's a good time. So with that, I'm gonna close out on that 111. And with that, I'm gonna greet you in peace.